Hello, I'm Laura McInerney, co-founder of Teacher Tapp, the app that asks thousands of teachers 3 daily questions so you can find out what's really going on the ground in schools. We've teamed up with the guys from InnerDrive to bring you InnerTapp, where we look at what teachers are thinking and what the research is saying about key topics in education. Today, we're talking about behaviour in schools, a big topic that shapes the everyday reality about the way schools function. Ultimately, when behaviour is problematic, teaching suffers, staff become demoralised, and the pupils lose out. From our data, we think it's the closest we've found to a silver bullet for improving school performance. In our most recent survey, 76% of teachers said some form of poor behaviour had occurred in their last lesson, and for around 40%, it reached the point where learning stopped altogether. And a small but substantial proportion of teachers, around 1 in 8, said that disruption lasted for more than 10 minutes, which is a considerable loss of learning time. Some teachers also experience much more disruption than others. New teachers are more likely to experience behaviour challenges than those more experienced teachers. Around 60% of teachers with less than 5 years of experience said learning was stopped due to behaviour in their last lesson, compared to around only 20% of teachers with more than 20 years of experience. Head teachers are also much less likely to report disruption in their last lesson. Typically, it's because they're more experienced, but also the status of their role means they are less exposed to that persistent, low-level disruption which other teachers see. At certain times of the year, particularly in the spring term, we also find behaviour overtakes all other worries as the main source of teacher stress. But at any time of year, it's in the top 3 concerns, and it seems to be a real contributor as to why people choose to move schools or even leave the profession altogether. Now, we sometimes talk about behaviour as if it's only about serious incidents, but when we ask teachers which behaviours really bother them, it's the everyday things that come up most often: answering back, chatting, calling out. These aren't dramatic incidents, but they grind teachers down. Receiving support to reduce these behaviours, whether that's through clear school-wide expectations or learning techniques to minimise them in class, is likely appreciated by teachers. When we asked teachers how they would choose to improve behaviour, 3 things stood out. 1, they want clear rules. 2, consequences that are actually followed through. And 3, a collective effort from all staff. For example, 70% of teachers want behaviour policies to specify when parents should be contacted, yet only 48% say their current policy does this. We see similar disparities around detentions and mobile phones. Teachers are typically in favour of clear, central policies about both of these things. The gap between what teachers need to feel supported and what's actually in place is often wider than it should be. And the good news is leaders can make a difference. Where teachers believe leaders are enforcing policies and supporting behaviour, then the overall climate of the school is better. However, and this is crucial, it is not just for leaders to solve. Behaviour is a whole school culture. Teachers want their colleagues to be part of the solution, yet 1 in 5 teachers on Teacher Tapp told us very honestly that they do not see improving behaviour as part of their role, and only a third say they follow the behaviour policy all of the time. One reason why teachers say they don't follow the behaviour policy is that they don't agree with it, or they don't think it will work. Yet a majority of teachers say that what is important to them is that senior leaders act consistently when it comes to implementing behaviour policies. If senior leaders are inconsistently implementing policies, then it's hard for teachers to understand what they should do. And if the teachers are inconsistent, then it makes it harder for the pupils to know where they stand. Plus, it's harder for colleagues who are making a stand if another teacher later undermines them. Our data therefore suggests that it's crucial, whatever the behaviour policy, that it's clearly communicated and embedded with as many people as possible following it. So, to finish, we're going to hand over to Bradley from InnerDrive, who'll talk through what the research says about improving behaviour in schools.
Research supports one of the key points that Laura found in the Teacher Tapp data, that it is often not the severity but the frequency of behaviour that takes up a lot of time and focus. For example, talking out of turn has been especially highlighted in the research. It is interesting to note that researchers have found that boys are consistently identified as being more challenging than girls, with girls receiving around 70% more praise than boys, and boys receiving well over double the amount of negative comments that girls do. Other research has found that even when displaying similar behaviour, boys are more likely to be labelled the class clown. This label leads to their peers viewing them in a more negative light, as well as it damaging their own self-perception. Now, sometimes the discourse around behaviour is pitched as deterrence and incentives versus teaching students how to self-regulate better. But of course, the two are not mutually exclusive. Research suggests, and strongly encourages, that we do both. Let's start with deterrence and incentives. Evidence suggests that deterrents that are perceived as most effective by students include detentions and getting unfavourable reports sent home. Regarding incentives, research suggests that celebrating the positives can improve behaviour in the classroom, with praise, positive letters home, and the opportunity for free time rated highly. So that's a bit about deterrence and incentives. What about self-regulation? Evidence suggests that we can divide this into three categories. The first is emotional behaviours, which include things such as dealing with setbacks, self-esteem, and self-worth. The second is social behaviours, including pupils' relationships with teachers and peers, and collaborative learning. The third is cognitive behaviours, which include elements of motivation, mindset, and communication. As well as deterrence, incentives, and self-regulation, there is actually a third area that can significantly impact behaviour, and that is classroom culture and environment. Classroom culture is set by the teacher. They set the climate for how students will behave and what behaviours are encouraged. In the research, this is known as the Pygmalion effect. In Greek mythology, Pygmalion was a renowned sculptor who had such high expectations for his statue that it turned it into a real person. And it's the name coined by researchers to describe how students perform better if their teacher had high expectations of them. As well as high expectations, taking control of the layout of the classroom can really help. For example, one fascinating study found that when teachers let students choose their own seats, they are 3 times more disruptive compared to when the teacher chooses the seating plan. So to summarise, the research on behaviour is wide-ranging and multifaceted. A combination of deterrence, incentives, developing self-regulation skills, and having a clearly defined culture built upon high expectations can make all the difference.
Every school is different, but there are some common principles that make a real difference. Behaviour just isn't an add-on. When it's poor, it undermines everything else. Learning suffers, workloads increase, and staff morale drops. But it can be improved. Teachers aren't asking for silver bullets. They want clear, fair, consistently applied policies backed by visible leadership.